will be achieved using Spring Framework, and we can easily create one object, two object, whatever objects you want to create. We can easily create them by using either one of the ways, that is XML configuration file, that is called a Spring configuration file, and also it can also be done either by annotation way. Okay, so dependency injection. Yesterday, if you remember, Nikhil, I told setter injection, right? So setter injection, property value equal to, and the property name equal to, and then value equal to. Remember that? I will switch my workspace. Huh.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is called as the setter injection. And whereas the construction injection is also a type of dependency. Basically, initialization of instance variables can be understood as dependency injection. Okay, and dependency injection is done using an XML file, and setter injection where we use the setter method in order to initialize some variables through an XML file with the property tag. Okay, and constructor arg is used for constructor injection, where we need a constructor for that particular class and we need to initialize those variables, and it will ultimately give me initialized values for our instance variables. Okay, these are the two types of dependency injection which we have in our Spring framework. Okay, inversion of control, if you remember, inversion of control or Spring configuration, the same Spring configuration, all means the same. It is nothing but the XML file which we refer in our Spring framework, which creates the bean or a object. Bean is nothing but creation of the object. Okay, Spring beans is nothing but that bean tag, which if you see the bean tag, I will just show you if it has loaded. The bean tag, if you remember, that itself is the Spring beans, and we also have the annotation for it. It is nothing but @bean. I will show you another way of creating the object today. @bean is also there. Yesterday, I think I told you @bean is an annotation which creates the bean, or you can refer to the XML tag, which is nothing but the same is used in XML with the name bean tag, and we need to close the bean tag in the XML format. Something like this. Okay, this is done in the XML file, whereas this part with annotation is done in the Java code. Okay, and then we learned few annotations. Can you give me few annotations which we did in the yesterday's class? Annotations. @component, yes. @component, it creates an object for us. @configuration creates configuration file. @component scan, we can give the packages which are to be scanned for the components, right? And what else? Which are the other annotations which we came across? Okay. Now bean cycle. So first of all, we need to understand the bean life cycle. We will understand that. Hold on. And then Spring configuration is again nothing but the XML file or a @configuration. That itself is the Spring configuration file. Okay, there are different modules of the Spring framework which will help us for our working on the Spring framework, understanding for different concepts. So in Java, we can connect to the database, work on the database, or we can develop a website, right? So many different frameworks, things a Java can do. The Spring framework is a framework of frameworks. Okay, so that is the reason it has to support all the things that Java is supporting. So for example, for data access, that means for the database connections and all, we have all this supported by the Spring framework. Okay, and then for the development of web, we have web MVC. Anyone familiar with what is MVC? What is MVC? Model View Controller. Okay, so that is supported by the Spring framework. Aspect-oriented programming is being supported in our Spring framework, which is very important. And then core container. Core container is only the thing that is in your syllabus. I have covered the beans. Beans is nothing but creating of the object. Core is again nothing but the creation of the XML file annotations. Context is the application context. See here. The core module provides fundamental parts like the IOC and dependency injection features. The bean module is nothing but it is implementation of the factory pattern, or it provides us the object. And then context, it refers to XML file, or it refers to the configuration file provided with the at configuration. Okay, the application context. Okay. And SPEL is the Spring Expression Language, which is a powerful expression language for querying, manipulating any object at the runtime. Okay, so these are some of the useful links. I will send these everything in the chat box for you. And I also explained the two ways of creating a project in Spring. That is by adding the Spring jar files externally or creating a Maven project. And also two methods of creating the objects in Spring is XML configuration or by using the annotations. Okay, you can go through all these things and you can understand this. So these are different steps. Everything I have explained these things. Maven, how it is I have explained separately. Okay, did I send the Maven slides also in the chat box? Let me send that. Okay, I'll send some of the materials. Okay, this is about the Maven basics. And then I will send the Spring one. Wait, Spring is there in another folder. Java. It is updating. Okay, these 3 slides are updating, but then you can just use the slides. Updated slides I will send after once it is updated. But whatever is there for your syllabus, I think I've covered all of them. Some extra content is also there. No need to cover those things. Okay, so now we got to know what is Maven project. Maven project helps us to create any Spring project or any multiple things you can do. And for us as part of Spring is what is important is how to add the dependencies to pom.xml file, and then create how you can create the Pojo, test XML, all that we got to know yesterday. Okay, and then let's understand IOC. Okay, what is inversion of control? Inversion of control is nothing but it is a container and is responsible to instantiate, configure, and assemble the objects. So for example, you can provide all the information in an XML file, or you can, this is itself, the XML file itself is called as inversion of control. Okay, so the purpose of XML file is to instantiate the application class, to configure the object, to assemble the dependencies. All these can be done using an XML file. Okay, so for this there are two types of IOC containers. One is the bean factory and the other one is the application. These are interfaces. Okay, interfaces. Okay, these are interfaces. And then on top of application context, on top of bean factory, application context is lying. Okay, 5 minutes. Huh? Okay. Fine. Okay, now this bean factory and application context, they are responsible for creating our inversion of control. Okay, so that means using this particular line of code, what we did yesterday, I will show you, I will just recollect. So if I go to the test class, no, see here, this application context, it is referring to the XML file in this case. Or if you go back one step, so I did the annotation, right? Annotation way of test. So this is referring to a configuration file. Again, this is also application context. Okay, you can make it as just as application context also. You have to just import the class. So basically, this is an application context help us for the inversion of control. And then the application context is interface is built on top of the bean factory, which is also an interface. It adds, only thing is application context, it adds some extra functionality. Okay, because it is on top, right? It will have extra functionality that bean factory such as simple integration and yeah, some extra functionality is there in application context. Okay, so most of the time we use application context. Then let's understand what is bean factory. Okay, bean factory is also, it is also an interface, and it is implemented by XML bean factory. We need to create the object of XML bean factory. The cost, okay, this is all not required. So using application context, how we wrote the code, application context is equal to, we can give any name of the XML file and it will create the ready object and it will store it in here. It is called as inversion of control. Okay, the control from XML file has come to the Java code. That is the reason of inversion of control. Okay, we pass the and then what is dependency injection? Dependency injection is a design pattern. Any idea what is a design pattern? Java is full of design patterns. Basically, design pattern is a standard solution for standard problem. So for example, let me give you an example. There's a standard problem. The signal on the road is not working. Okay, the signal on the road is not working. And what is the standard solution? To fix that particular signal using the proper person. Whoever is the signaling person, you have to call that person and fix it. Correct? That is a standard problem. So similar to that, we have some standard solutions for standard kind of problems. Just a minute, I'm getting a call. Hello. ಹೇಳು. ಆರಾಮದ ನೋಡಪ್ಪ ನೀ. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So this okay. I was explaining about what is design pattern, right? So design pattern is nothing but it is a standard solution for standard problem. So in our Java, if we end up in a problem, then there could be a standard solution for it. So that solution is given by a design pattern. So for example, I only need one object, whatever may be the case, I need only one object at all the times. No second object should be created. If that is the case, because see, for example, our Earth. So supposing you are building a solar system, then Earth is only one planet. In that case, Earth is only one object has to be created. There is no second Earth object to be created, right? So in that case, this is standard problem that we need only one object. So in that case, there is a design pattern that they have given, which is a standard solution, is make it as a singleton pattern, design pattern. The design pattern is only one object and only one object will be created throughout that particular application. Okay. So similar to that, so dependency injection is also a design pattern that removes the dependency from the programming code so that it can be easily manageable and testing also becomes easier. Okay, so using dependency injection, things will become loosely coupled basically. Okay, there will be loosely coupling of the code. And this is a design pattern used to implement IOC. Okay, how you can use IOC by implementing dependency injection, because in IOC we use the dependency injection, we do the setting of the property, we do the constructor injection, right? So the IOC is implemented by dependency injection. It allows the creation of dependent objects outside the class because we are using the XML file or a configuration file. So through different ways, and using DI we move the creation of binding of the dependent objects outside of the class. See, outside the class we can always create an object now using an XML configuration, or it could be annotation way. Okay, @component means already an object will be ready made for you. So to explain more about this DI, dependency injection, as I already told you, it is can be done by constructor injection or by a setter injection. Okay, so if you want to do it using the setter injection, the constructor injection, then constructor arg and put the value and put the data type, close the constructor arg. This is the constructor injection. Yesterday I already have demoed you using the code. Okay, and by setter injection, then we have to just give the property name of that particular instance variable, what is the value, and close the property. This is the entire property for ID instance variable. So similar for the name, if you want to give, then give proper. You should have the setter and getters for the employee class. Okay, so you should have this getters and setters, and property name equal to what is the name of the property, and value equal to also you can give value equal to Arun. Then close the property tag. So supposing city is a variable, instance variable in the class employee, then property name equal to city, value equal to Gazirabad. This can be done. Okay, everything this is defined in the bean. Bean means create an object of the ID obj using this particular class employee. So bean is the object. This is all the properties of one particular employee. He has ID instance variable, he has name instance variable, he has city. Okay, this way you can achieve the setter in dependency injection. So let's understand what is bean. Okay, see here we have this bean. No, what is this particular bean? Bean is nothing but it refers to objects that are created using our Spring framework. These are the backbone of our application and they are managed by the Spring IOC container called the beans. Right? Bean, we know XML properties now, @component, those are all the IOC. And then a bean is an object that is instantiated, assembled or otherwise managed by the Spring IOC container. Application context will have all the details of the beans. These beans are created using the configuration metadata that you supply to the container. And configuration is done by XML file. okay, or the annotations. So whatever you give in the XML file using the bean definition, this is the bean definition, using this particular bean, these all build our object obj of the type of the class employee. Okay. So this we have already known this. And bean definition contains the information called configuration metadata, which is needed for the container to know how to create the bean, how life cycle dependencies. Everything can be mentioned in the XML file or a configuration. At configuration is there, no, everything you can mention over there. So here this is all the configuration of the object called as obj of the type class employee. And then some self-study I want to give here. Please sit back and just go through this bean life cycle once. Just go through this. For the next 5 minutes, please sit back and go through this. Pani and Nikhil. Life cycle. How is the beans working with its life cycle? How does it initiate? How does it destroy? Go through that link and then list me the points which you understood. Okay, so just to help you people understand how the bean life cycle works. So what happens whenever you are using the Spring framework, a container which is called a Spring container. This container is there, no? It will be called as, it will create as always whenever you are using the Spring framework, a container will be created. Okay, so this container is called as Spring core container. Core container, and it will hold all your objects. Okay, whatever objects are created, whatever object holds objects, it will create all the objects and stores in it, says holds objects, holding all your objects. And supposing I have a class called as employee or student. Okay, I have a class student and I am using an XML file here, and I am configuring that particular object. Then what will happen? Already one object of the type student, even though you have not requested, it will already be created in the Spring Core container. Once you have this XML, it will know that, oh, I have to create this particular student object. Okay. Supposing you have another class called as employee, and employee, and you are using an annotation for the employee at component. Then at component means create the object for me. Again, a ready object, though you don't you request or not, employee object will be created in the Spring Core container. It will be ready to use. It will already be ready to use. If you call the employee, then this will be returned back. If you call the student object, it will be returned back. So this is the how the Spring Core container holds your objects. Okay, it will be ready, and you just have to request for that particular object using the context, application context. Okay, which is the inversion of control. Okay, so and how do you initialize these particular things? By using the dependency injection. Okay, supposing you want to initialize the employee. Okay, employee has an ID, employee has an whatever a name, right? So use the dependency injection, which is nothing but you can go for setter injection, or you can use the constructor injection for setting the properties of setting the instance variables. Okay, like for example, employee has a name, employee has an ID. You can do any of these things by using the dependency injection using the setter or constructor injection. So any doubts here before I go ahead? So if you understand this, no, then Spring Boot will be the next topic, and it will become very easy. Any doubts here so far? Funny, after watching the full video, you will get to know all the details, whatever I'm explaining now. You have to watch yesterday's video, then today's video, then it will become very clear. Nikhil, any doubts? Nikhil, any doubts?
No.
Okay, fine. Now, another thing which I will explain is to understand more about the annotations. So, the Java annotations are like metadata. You know now that they all start with @bean, @component, @configuration, @component scan. All those are there, which are annotations. So what are these annotations actually? They are metadata. Okay, they are the data about the data, and they add lot of source code for our code. So for example, once you say this employee is @component. @component means it is an annotation. So it will know that I have to create an object for this, it will be created. Okay, it will add some code which it is hidden from us, but it will be ready-made for us. So likewise, shortcut, like using the short form of our source code, we can achieve the things working using the annotations. Okay, so basically they provide additional information about the code to the compiler, and they are not part of the program itself. They are not part of the program. There is just additional information for our program. Okay, and annotations do not affect the execution of the compiled program. Once your code is ready compiled, no, it will not affect the execution. So these are like basic things. So for example, to give an @override annotation, no, it specifies that the method is being overridden from the superclass in the subclass. So it is not a mandatory @override, but doing this is safer side. So that is the reason we generally use the annotations. Annotations have additional information. Okay. In Spring, we all deal with everything in annotations. For example, you want to get a getter at getter, and then you want to have a parameter in a method, request param. Okay, you want to have a response body in a web page or something, you use at response body. You want to have some exception handler at exceptional handler. You want to have the controller at controller. Particular to the REST control, if you want to have, these are everything is an annotation. If you observe a repository, controller, setter, auto wired, all these are just the annotation examples. You can there is a lot of exercises you can go through this one of the links, and you can understand better. But for your purpose, I see there is, I don't have to go to each and every annotations. Okay, for your syllabus, what has been given for me is at configuration. Yesterday I have showed you. At bean I can show it today. Okay, at bean, if you want, I can show it today. So let me show it for a while. At bean, no, it will also, at bean means basically bean always refers to object, that you have to remember. Okay, so yesterday I had done that project, my Maven Spring project. I will use this. So instead of at component, if you use, I see I have a company a class here which has public static void main, and this company class, class is using an annotated class called as employee config, and we are creating an object using annotation employee config. Okay, and we are trying to do some work. Basically this does not matter as long as we are able to get the employee object. So let's see what is there in employee config here. So in employee config, it is a configuration file. Okay, and here I am using at bean. At bean, if I use at component, no, I have to use a at component scan either, or if I want to directly get an object of the type employee, I can always say at bean, and it has to return me a new employee. That is the purpose of at bean. It will give me an employee object. Whatever object you want to create for a particular method, that is important. At component means it is at the, I will show you at component. So this is at component. Okay, if you make this at component, then no need to have this method here. Okay, for the class level, you have to use at component. For the method level, it is a method, hello world. We are using at bean. Use at bean whenever you want to do it on a method. So this is at bean. Configure this one. Okay, and without XML. Okay, all these things are for your information. For more information, you can go ahead with these things. But these are my general big huge training. This is Spring is not just about a week training or so. There are so many multiple parts in Spring framework itself. Spring Dove is there. It is like one big framework, okay, which is a big umbrella. It is supporting so many multiple things. So for example, it supports database, it supports web development, it supports how everything is handled. So there is Spring Dove, there is Spring Hibernate, there is Spring way of doing the Spring Boot. Okay, so many things are there in Spring framework itself. So one of the things that you have learned just now is the Spring Beans. Okay, I will show you the syllabus here. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. As part of your syllabus, first of all, you have to be thorough with the core Java. Once you are thorough with Java, then you can touch upon the Spring. And let me show you the syllabus here. So Maven concepts yesterday have covered some Maven basics, that it is enough for our part. So Maven, how it works, okay, all this part I have covered. Then in Spring Framework, dependency injection I have covered, inversion of control I have covered, Spring Beans, okay, at bean and the bean in XML configuration, okay, and then annotations I have covered. Spring life cycle I have given it as an exercise. You can cover it, is not much. Okay, init means it will initiate in the this Spring Core container. Destroy means it will take out, it will remove it from the Spring Core container. Okay, and then Spring configuration is the either you can use annotation called as at configuration, or you can do it using the XML configuration. This completes. Spring is a huge framework. Just they have given the basics, very basic level Spring framework they have given. But anyway, you can always learn the things once you get on with the basics. It will be like repeating, but you have to understand some of the basic concepts. Okay. So any doubts here in Spring framework? So next I will be handling the Spring Boot from Monday. Okay, no class tomorrow, no class on Friday. I'm out of station. So on Monday, once we are back, we will start with the Spring Boot. Spring Boot is an extension for the Spring framework. Okay, we will why Spring Boot, dev or tools, actuator, application properties, Spring Boot, internals we will use. Okay, embedded server, okay, Swagger API, okay, application build and deployment. Okay, we will do this. Then we will revisit the Hibernate concepts. After that, we will come back to this everything I will cover here itself. Using this together, we will do this in the same order. We will go. After this, we will go ahead with Hibernate, JIT, and microservices, and we have to make up a capstone project. Okay, so be ready with all these things. Okay, so any doubts in Spring framework, you can let me know.